Ice in the veins. I always thought that life was like a mountain trail. Sometimes there are steep turns on the path that can only be overcome if you know exactly when to slow down and when to speed up. I got used to reading tracks in the snow. This skill saved my life more than once. But I never thought that someday I would have to read tracks left by those I loved. I'll tell you a story about how snow melting in the sun can hide rot, and how the human heart can be darker than the blackest abyss between mountain ridges. A story about how I, Ryan Shepherd, tracked predators in my own home. Chapter 1: Dawn Frost. At 36, I thought I knew everything about life. 8 years as a military medic in hot zones, 4 years in mountain rescue service, and finally, my own resort, Hawks Peak, in the heart of Wyoming, where dazzling slopes and crystal mountain air make you forget the past. The money I received after being shell-shocked in Iraq, I invested in this land, as if burying my military ghosts there. Lauren, my wife, whom I met 6 years ago during a snowstorm on these same slopes, transformed Hawks Peak into a profitable business. A 29-year-old Berkeley Business School graduate, she became the brains of the operation, while I was its hands, heart, and exhausted legs. An old shrapnel wound in my thigh forced me to lean on a cane on cold days, but I learned to ignore the pain, just as I ignored sympathetic glances. Everything changed 2 months ago when Lauren insisted on hiring a new marketing director. "We have a chance to take the resort to a national level, Ryan," she said, adjusting her chestnut hair with a gesture that always seemed too calculated for her young age. Trevor Hayes appeared with recommendations from the country's largest resorts, with a smile that sparkled like snow on a frosty morning, and the talent to make anyone within a 10-meter radius feel special. This ability of his particularly extended to the women on our staff, and as I noticed too late, to my wife. The morning briefing in the main building of Hawks Peak proceeded as usual. I stood before the team, trying not to obviously lean on my cane, when one insignificant detail caused the first ripple of concern on the smooth surface of my confidence. Lauren's gaze directed at Trevor. There was something intimate in that look, something I hadn't seen since the first months of our acquaintance. "In 10 days, we're launching a new cable car to the northern slope." I looked around at the employees, 15 familiar faces and one, new, too confident for someone who had been working here for only 6 weeks. "This is a key project for the resort's expansion. Trevor has developed a new security system that will allow us to avoid problems even in the harshest weather." Trevor, in a dark blue sweater with the resort's logo, pushed off from the wall and stepped into the center of the room. His movements resembled those of a predator, soft, measured, economical. In the Army, I met such guys in special units. They smiled before slitting a throat. But perhaps it was just my paranoid mind of an 8-year veteran, seeing enemies where there were none. "I have a few innovative proposals for modernizing the security system," Trevor spoke slowly, as if weighing each word on invisible scales. "I conducted a detailed analysis and identified bottlenecks that need improvement." Lauren rushed to support him. "I think we're incredibly lucky that Trevor joined the team right now. His experience in risk management at the largest resorts in Aspen and Vail is exactly what we need for growth." I couldn't help but notice how she twisted her wedding ring on her finger, a nervous habit that had emerged in the past month. Previously, she only did this when her mother, Eleanor, called, a woman with a heart colder than the Grand Teton summit and equally impenetrable manners. After the meeting, I went to inspect the territory. My boots left clear tracks on the morning crust. The season was in full swing, the slopes filled with tourists, but I still preferred to walk each route myself, as in the early days of the resort's operation. Today I was heading to the Wolf's Den Cottage, an isolated cabin on a difficult section of the northern slope, closed to visitors until spring. It was there, 6 years ago, that I found Lauren lost in a blizzard, then just a frightened tourist from California who had accidentally gone off the marked trail. I remember seeing her for the first time, curled up in a sleeping bag she had found in the cottage's emergency kit, trembling from cold and fear. Her lips were blue and her eyes green as spring grass, a snub nose, rosy cheeks. "I thought I would die here," she whispered then. I replied, "Not today." Thus began our strange romance, with frostbite and rescue. Now approaching Wolf's Den, I suddenly froze. On the pristine snow, two types of tracks were clearly visible, male and female. They led straight to the service entrance. Strange. This area was not closed for nothing, an avalanche-prone section. Every employee knew about it. I silently followed the tracks, habitually reading information. The tracks were fresh, no more than an hour old. The person who left the male track weighed about 180 pounds, step even, confident. The woman, light, hurried. The side window of the cottage was ajar despite the frost, and muffled voices came from there. "Ryan won't suspect anything." Lauren's voice sounded playful, with a huskiness I only heard in our bedroom. "He's too immersed in his business plans and safety checks. Between us, Trevor, my husband can be led by the nose like a circus bear, especially now that he's simply obsessed with this damned cable car." "And the insurance documents." Trevor's voice was low, insinuating. "We need his signature on the updated policy." "Leave that to me, darling," Lauren laughed. "I've been handling the finances for 6 years. He'll sign anything if I ask him to. He's used to blindly trusting me in everything related to paperwork." The sound of a kiss, rustling clothes, a stifled moan. I stepped back from the window, feeling a heavy wave of anger rising in my chest. But 8 years in military hospitals taught me one simple truth: emotions are the enemy of accurate diagnosis. Before cutting, you need to make sure you know where the tumor is. And I decided to conduct a thorough reconnaissance. In the evening, Lauren prepared my favorite rare steaks: dimness, candles, expensive red wine. Her eyes sparkled, a blush played on her cheeks. She was beautiful, it's hard to argue with that. But now I looked at her as I would examine a patient with unclear symptoms. What was hiding beneath this flawless skin? "Trevor is just bursting with ideas for the new route," she spoke quickly, as if rehearsing this speech. "You know, he proposed an amazing concept for the Northern cable car, and most surprisingly, he has connections in the insurance business. We could get a much more favorable insurance coverage." I slowly chewed the meat, studying the play of light on her wedding ring, the same one I put on her finger 6 years ago on the top of the Grand Teton, when she, all in tears, said yes. "Yes, Trevor seems like a very useful acquisition." I deliberately paused, watching her reaction. "Fine, take care of the insurance. I trust your choice as always, Lauren." She smiled, and in the corners of her eyes flickered something I hadn't noticed before or didn't want to notice. Calculation. Cold, precise calculation. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I sat in my office, studying Trevor's recommendation letters in the dim light of a desk lamp. Small inconsistencies in dates, strange wording, lack of specificity in places where it should be. Unnoticeable to an ordinary person, but not to someone who filled out medical cards for 8 years, where each error could cost a life. I took out my phone and dialed Carla Sanchez, my former comrade who after service went into cybersecurity. "Hi, Carla. Remember you said I could reach out anytime. I need information on someone, Trevor Hayes, especially interested in his work at other ski resorts." Outside, a blizzard was raging, covering tracks in the snow. But I knew some tracks wouldn't disappear even if all the snow in Wyoming fell. Chapter 2: Winter Heart. Carla's call woke me up at 3:17 in the morning. Her voice sounded tense, like in those times when we were dropped in mountain areas to evacuate the wounded. "Ryan, you better sit down. I dug into the data on your Trevor Hayes and the results. Damn, I haven't seen such mess in a long time." I silently left the bedroom, leaving Lauren sleeping, or pretending to sleep. In the office, I poured myself whiskey, an old habit from service days, when bad news had to be washed down so that hands wouldn't tremble at the operating table. In the last 4 years, fatal accidents occurred at 3 ski resorts, Carla spoke abruptly, as if in a briefing. In all cases, problems with cable cars. Insurance companies paid huge compensations. 2 resorts closed. And you know what unites these cases? A certain safety consultant appearing a few months before each incident. Different names, but methods. The methods are the same. I felt the back of my neck going numb. Memories of yesterday's overheard conversation at the cottage flashed with new force. Insurance, documents, signatures. Now everything was taking on a sinister meaning. Sending you the files, continued Carla. And something else. Your Hayes is a former military man, not a simple soldier but an operative of the PMC Arctic Shadow. Heard of them? I had heard, and those memories left a metallic taste in my mouth. In Iraq, there were rumors about these guys. They did dirty work without asking questions. Those who didn't fit even into the soft framework of the military code. Thanks, Carla, I rubbed my eyes. I owe you one. Be careful, Ray. These guys from Arctic Shadow, they have their own morality. Money decides everything. They won't be stopped by doubts or fear. For a big score, they'll do anything. And they never work alone. The morning was cloudless, with that piercing mountain blue that makes the heart clench with beauty. The resort was preparing for the grand opening of the new cable car. Workers were hanging flags and banners, setting up a stage for skiers' performances. Trevor, in a perfectly fitting thermal suit, was directing the preparation of the press area. Ryan, he waved his hand amicably. Want to take a look at the opening program? I've prepared something special. Now I looked at him differently. Behind the mask of a good-natured marketer, I saw the eyes of a man used to counting lives as statistics. Behind the smooth movements, years of training not in a fitness center, but in mercenary camps. Sure, friend, I smiled back, amazed at how easily my facial muscles formed a friendly expression when everything inside was boiling. Show me. I'm already too old for all these newfangled shows. Trevor unfolded the plans on the snowmobile's hood. His fingers, I only now noticed the characteristic calluses that people who regularly work with weapons have, quickly glided over the schemes. Here will be the main presentation. He pointed to an area next to a dangerous crevice. A difficult route, but it adds spectacle. We'll invite the press, investors. They'll be thrilled. I'm sure they will, I muttered, noting how carefully he had chosen the spot, the most dangerous point on the entire trail. By lunchtime, the resort resembled a disturbed anthill. Trevor was everywhere, joking with instructors, consulting technicians, charming administrative personnel. He radiated energy and competence, the perfect mask. He's just amazing, whispered Ashley, a young reception administrator, enthusiastically. Such a professional and so easy to communicate with people. Do you know if he's married? No idea, Ashley, I smiled, swallowing the bitterness. But yes, he's a real professional. A professional killer and con artist. After lunch, I noticed Lauren entering the technical department. 20 minutes later, Trevor came out, casually stuffing some papers into the inner pocket of his jacket. It took me just a few seconds to get inside the room. Lauren was standing by the copy machine collecting documents, insurance policies, technical specifications, emergency system diagrams. Her cheeks were burning and her hands were slightly trembling, like back then, 6 years ago in the wolf's den. Oh, honey, she flinched, noticing me. You scared me. I'm just preparing documents for the insurance company. Trevor advised updating our policies before opening the new route, just in case. Although, of course, everything will be fine, but better to be overly cautious, right? Absolutely, I nodded. Safety first. You're doing the right thing checking these papers. Mistakes can be costly. In the evening, I returned to the technical department. In the trash bin, I found crumpled drawings of the lift with some markings. I straightened one of the sheets. Red crosses on nodal connections. Someone was calculating maximum loads at the most vulnerable points of the structure. The Tavern Mountain Shelter was a favorite place for the resort's technical staff to relax. I sat at the counter, pretending to be completely absorbed in my glass. At the next table, Eddie, the chief engineer, was discussing the upcoming opening with colleagues. "These new requirements are strange," he grumbled, downing his third shot of tequila. "In 12 years of working with lifts, it's the first time I've seen such a scheme. Reduce rope tension by 10%. It's elementary physics. You can't do that." I tried to object. "Shut up, Eddie," his partner interrupted him. "The boss trusts this haze. That means he knows what he's doing. Our job is small, turning the nuts." I felt a chill run down my spine. Weakened cables, a difficult section of the route, a crowd of people at the opening, big insurance. Everything added up to a terrifying picture that made even me, who had seen death in hot spots, feel my heart tighten. At that moment, Trevor and Lauren entered the tavern. They didn't notice me in the half-darkness, taking a far corner table. I watched as my wife leaned toward this man, how her hand rested on his palm, how they whispered about something, occasionally looking around. From aside, they looked like a loving couple. But I saw something else: two predators planning a hunt. 3 ruined resorts, dozens of victims, and that was just what Carla had managed to find. How many more victims were on the record of this smiling marketer and his accomplices? The phone in my pocket vibrated. A message from Carla. "Found something else. Remember that case in Austria a year and a half ago? It seems your guy had a direct connection to it. The insurance amounted to 35 million. Chapter 3, Scars on the Snow. After talking with Carla, sleep wouldn't come. I sat in my office, looking at a glass of whiskey that I never touched. On the table lay our wedding photograph, the day when Lauren in a white dress looked at me with such adoration that it took my breath away. I remembered every second, how her hands trembled when she pronounced the vow, how her hair smelled of champagne and alpine buttercups, how she whispered forever between kisses. Now those lips were whispering words of love to another. "Where did I go wrong, Lauren?" My voice sounded unexpectedly hoarse in the silence of the office. "When did I lose you? What drives you, passion or greed, or passion for money?" From the bedroom came her steady breathing. She slept too peacefully for someone balancing on the edge of an abyss. Carla said that in every Trevor scam there was a woman in love, becoming a pawn in his game. The morning briefing began exactly at 9. I watched as Trevor, impeccable in his ski suit, laid out blueprints for the new security system. His movements were precise, polished, not a marketer but a special forces fighter. Lauren sat a little to the side, with one leg crossed over the other, biting the end of a pencil, a habit that appeared in moments of nervous excitement. "As you can see," Trevor spoke softly, but with that special intonation that allows no objections, "the new system takes into account all the features of the mountain terrain. We will significantly reduce risks in any weather conditions." "Magnificent," Lauren exhaled, and in her voice sounded the same admiration that was once intended only for me. "Isn't it, darling?" I slowly rose from my seat. The pain in my thigh awakened again, a good old indicator warning that I was about to do something dangerous. "So magnificent," I allowed a smile to touch my lips, "that I think Trevor should go with you to Salt Lake City, dear. You'll help Lauren with the technical details for the insurance company, won't you?" The air in the room seemed to freeze. Lauren and Trevor exchanged quick glances. In their eyes was a mixture of surprise and poorly concealed joy. "Are you sure?" Lauren tried to speak evenly, but her voice treacherously quivered. "I could handle it myself." "Of course you could," I approached my wife, limping slightly. "But this is Trevor's project. No one better than him can explain all the technical nuances to the insurers. Besides," I squeezed her shoulder encouragingly, "it will be easier to convince them together. Your charm plus Trevor's expertise, an unbeatable combination. I would be happy to help. Trevor tried to speak evenly, but something like triumph flashed in his eyes. If Lauren doesn't mind. Of course she doesn't mind, I smiled wider. Right, my love. When everyone left, Lauren stayed behind. Her hands were trembling when she approached me. Ryan, if you think something then, she began, but I pulled her close, cutting off the phrase. It's all right, sunshine, I don't think anything, I completely trust you. And Trevor too, you're a great team. She shuddered in my arms, and for a moment it seemed to me that she wanted to say something. But the moment passed, and Lauren silently left the office. All day I watched as they prepared for the trip. Their anxious glances, accidental touches, quiet conversations in the corner, all this told a story of not just a criminal conspiracy, but something more complex. I saw how Lauren reached for Trevor, as if he possessed some magnetic force, how her eyes lit up at his every appearance, how she imperceptibly inhaled his scent when he leaned over the documents. Everything looked too natural. In the evening, when both had gone to pack for tomorrow's trip, the phone vibrated. A message from my informant in the insurance company made my heart skip a beat. Lauren had recently changed the insurance terms. In case of an accident with human casualties, all compensation, $45 million, was to be paid directly to her. God, Lauren, I muttered, looking at the night mountains. What has he allowed you to get involved in? The call from Carla sounded like the last nail in the coffin. Ryan found something interesting. In each of his scams there was a woman in love. Can you guess what became of them? I knew. Oh, I knew too well what happens to pawns when they are no longer needed. But now I had an advantage. A full day to study all the details of the impending catastrophe while these two would be in Salt Lake City, thinking they had outplayed me. Chapter 4: Wolf Trap. I stood by the panoramic window of my office, watching as Lauren's silver BMW disappeared around the bend of the Serpentine. 36 hours. That's how much time I had to decipher their plan and prepare a countermove. That's exactly why I suggested they go together. Well then, let's start the hunt, I muttered, heading to the technical department. In the empty building, my steps echoed off the walls, adorned with photographs of happy skiers. The irony didn't escape me. The place I created as a refuge from war and violence had turned into a setting for another battle. Apparently, you can't escape certain things, no matter how much snow lies between you and your past. In Trevor's office reigned exemplary order, everything sorted into folders, not a speck of dust on the desk. Military habits give a person away stronger than any dossier. I'm the same, 6 years of peaceful life, and I still fold my socks according to Army standards. The new safety specifications lay in a blue folder with silver embossing. As I flipped through the pages, my experienced eye caught details that formed a disturbing mosaic. Trevor was really good. Every change looked absolutely logical. Every modification had an impeccable technical justification. On paper, it was a perfect security system. In fact, a perfectly planned catastrophe. Damn talented bastard, I muttered, examining the schemes through a magnifying glass. A real artist of mass deaths. The plan was flawless. The accident was supposed to look like the result of a tragic coincidence of circumstances, an unforeseen change in wind load, which the improved system couldn't compensate for. What particularly struck me, the carefully calculated pace of the incident, minimizing possible victims. Trevor wasn't aiming for a bloodbath. He needed just a few victims, enough to trigger an avalanche of lawsuits and receive an insurance payment, but not enough for the case to become so resonant that it would attract federal experts. The next hours I spent at the upper station of the cable car. The piercing wind howled between the supports, but I methodically checked each node, each fastening. When I found the critical point, the place where the modified connections wouldn't withstand a certain combination of load and wind, I was overwhelmed by a sharp sense of déjà vu. It was like in Iraq, when I discovered an improvised mine the day before a planned passage of a convoy with the wounded. Then I managed to save 12 lives. What would happen now? History repeats itself, I muttered, photographing the fastening nodes. Only now the enemy isn't hiding in the mountains. He's sleeping with my wife. Returning home, I discovered that Lauren, in a hurry, had forgotten to log out of her email account on our home computer. Casting aside doubts, I sat down to read her correspondence. The letters in the personal folder opened my eyes to the true scale of betrayal. Dear Mom, you always said I deserved better, that I'm wasting my best years with this disabled man playing businessman. I finally understand what you meant. After what will happen soon, I'll be able to start a new life. It will look like an accident. They often happen in the mountains. Ryan will lose everything and won't even understand that he's been fooled, like a naive child. Speaking of Trevor, he offered me a part in this deal and thinks I'm just a stupid provincial girl, charmed by his experience and charisma. I play along as best I can, but his hopes that I'll share the insurance with him are as naive as Ryan's dreams of a happy marriage. Only I will win. As soon as the deed is done, we'll immediately go on that cruise you've always dreamed of. I promise. So that's how it is. I leaned back in the chair, feeling a strange numbness. Mother and daughter, honey on the outside, poison inside. My wife turned out to be much smarter than I thought. It wasn't Trevor who seduced my wife, but she used him to get the insurance. And apparently, planned to get rid of both men in her life with one clever move. The next evening, their BMW returned from Salt Lake City. Lauren flew into the house, radiant with success, with bags from expensive stores. Trevor followed her, exuding the calm confidence of a man holding all the cards. Ryan, darling, Lauren kissed me on the cheek, enveloping me with the scent of new perfume. You can't imagine how magnificently everything went. The insurance company is absolutely delighted with our modernization plans. Trevor is just a genius. We worked on the documents all night, clarifying details. Everything went perfectly, added Trevor, settling into my favorite armchair. They've never seen such an approach to security. I don't doubt it, I smiled, pouring whiskey into glasses. Speaking of security, I was thinking. About what, dear? Lauren froze by the kitchen counter, and something in her voice made me internally tense. Tomorrow is the last day before the opening. I suggest the three of us walk the cable car route in the morning. Check every node, every fastening. I want to be completely confident before the launch. No one, except the three of us, is more interested in success, right? A heavy silence hung in the room. I could almost physically feel the tension thickening. Darling, Lauren began, but Trevor interrupted her. Ryan, you're absolutely right. I appreciate your thoroughness, but let's be realistic. Tomorrow is a hellish day. A full inspection will take at least 8 hours, and we still have a ton of unresolved issues with documents, safety system check. Besides, he cast a quick glance at Lauren, we've been running ourselves ragged the last few days. So we can't manage the entire route, I shrugged. But let's at least check the key sections, especially the section at the northern slope. What do you think? Trevor almost imperceptibly relaxed. A reasonable compromise. The main thing is to check the main section. That's where the greatest load and tourist flow are. Agreed, I raised my glass. We'll start at 8 in the morning. And don't forget full gear in the mountains. You need to be ready for anything. Of course, beloved, Lauren smiled, but her fingers clutching the wine glass trembled slightly. As you say. When they went to their rooms, I stood by the window for a long time, looking at the snow-covered peaks. Somewhere there, at a height, the denouement of this story awaited me, and I knew exactly which section of the route we would be checking especially carefully tomorrow. Chapter 5, White Void. The morning greeted us with a piercing wind and low, leaden clouds. I stood at the foot of the lift, checking the equipment. Climbing carabiners, safety cables, radios, all like in the old days of working in the mountain rescue service. A GoPro camera was imperceptibly attached to my chest, plus something special, hidden in the inner pocket of my jacket, a little gift for the loving couple. Damn cold, I shivered, looking at the thermometer. -20, the wind intensifying. Perfect weather for what I had in mind. Lauren appeared first, impeccable in her bright red Moncler ski suit, with light makeup, as if she was going to a photo shoot for a sports magazine. "Good morning, darling," she kissed me on the cheek. "God, what a terrible cold. Maybe we should postpone the inspection." "Afraid of freezing," I grinned. "Don't worry, soon it will get hot." "What do you mean?" "The weather might change," I shrugged, watching how her fingers nervously twitched on the carabiners. "I'm ready." Trevor appeared unexpectedly, as always collected and businesslike. "Shall we start from the lower station and move up to the section at the northern slope and then back, as agreed?" "Of course," I patted him on the shoulder. "That's where the most interesting part is." I noticed how Lauren and Trevor exchanged glances, a quick, anxious look, like two foxes sensing danger but not yet understanding where it was coming from. The first hour passed in routine inspection. Trevor spoke about technical details with the air of a professor giving a lecture. "See these connections? I reinforced them with additional fastenings. Now no storm is frightening. Everything here is maximally reliable." "Impressive," I nodded. "And what's further ahead beyond this turn?" "Nothing special," Trevor replied too quickly. "Standard configuration." "Let's check anyway," I moved forward, "since we're here." "Honey," Lauren grabbed my sleeve. "Maybe enough for today. I'm frozen through. My fingers can no longer feel these carabiners." "Bear with it, sunshine. Just a little more left." I methodically led them to the designated point, to where, according to Trevor's schemes, weakened fastenings were installed, precisely in the place where the height difference created maximum load on the structure. "You know what's most important in the mountains?" I asked casually as we approached the necessary spot. "The ability to read signs. Weather, snow, people, everything leaves tracks. You just need to know how to notice them." "What's that about?" Wariness appeared in Trevor's voice. "Just remembered. By the way, look at these fastening nodes. I've never seen such a configuration." At that moment, a deafening rumble sounded. A sound like an explosion echoed through the gorge. From above fell fragments of ice and small stones. Trevor instantly assessed the situation. Ahead was the section weakened by him, behind, apparently, an avalanche. A second to make a decision. "This way," he shouted, pointing forward, though I saw understanding in his eyes. He was leading us right to where he himself had weakened the fastenings. But a sudden avalanche seemed a greater threat. "Ryan, oh my God, what to do?" Lauren darted between us, her eyes widened with horror. "Forward, run forward." Trevor grabbed her arm, but not to pull her along. On the contrary, he gently pushed her. "Go first, I'm right behind you." Lauren rushed along the narrow platform. She didn't know exactly where the weak link on the route was. Unlike Trevor, who, holding his breath, watched her every step, the structure should withstand the weight of one person. He had calculated everything when preparing the accident. But not two. Each of her steps was accompanied by a slight vibration of the metal, but the fastenings held. "Trevor," she turned around halfway across the span. "What are you waiting for?" He hesitated, afraid to come too close and increase the load. Snow fell more heavily, stones thundered on the metal structures. There was no choice left. Trevor stepped onto the platform. First step, second. The metal beneath his feet barely noticeably bent. "Hurry!" Panic rang in Lauren's voice. He had almost reached her when the first alarming creak sounded. That very sound of overstressed metal, which he must have imagined when planning the accident. The structure couldn't support the weight of two people. "Damn back!" he shouted, but it was too late. The right cable broke first, exactly as he had planned when calculating the accident. The metallic singing ended with a sharp pop. Then, unable to withstand the double load, the left one broke. The platform tilted, and at that moment Trevor noticed me. I stood exactly where the first stones had just fallen. I didn't run after them but remained at a safe distance, and in my eyes there was something like satisfaction. "Oh God, Ryan, help!" screamed Lauren, grabbing onto a broken piece of railing. The ground disappeared from under their feet. They were falling into the abyss, and in these seconds, Trevor must have understood the terrifying irony of what was happening. He had fallen into his own trap. But instead of a deadly impact on the rocks, the sound of sliding on snow was heard. Approaching the edge, I saw how two people, caught by safety cables to the remnants of the structure, were rolling down the steep slope straight into a dark gap in the rock, the entrance to a natural ice cave. God, no! Lauren's scream was cut short when the snow flow dragged them into the darkness. I knew about this cave. It was marked on all maps as a danger zone, a deep crevice going at an angle into the thickness of the mountain, spacious enough to survive falling into it, but too deep and slippery to get out without help. Unhurriedly, I descended on a safety rope to a narrow platform at the entrance to the cave. "Hey, are you alive in there?" I shouted into the darkness. "Lauren, are you all right?" "Yes, damn," Trevor's voice sounded muffled. "Lauren is here, seems intact. Get us out of here, Ryan. It's freezing cold. We won't last long." "Ryan, please." Tears rang in Lauren's voice, now real. "It's so dark and cold. I can't feel my legs." "I'll organize a rescue now," I shouted, stepping back from the edge. "I'm returning to base for help. Hang on, I'll be back soon." In reality, of course, I didn't go anywhere. I sat on a rock nearby, listening to how events were developing inside the cave. The sounds from there clearly reached outside, as if from an acoustic well. I didn't have to wait long. I heard how panic was growing below, at first quiet curses, then increasingly loud accusations. "Damn idiot," Lauren's voice broke. "It's all your fault. Your idiotic plan with a staged accident. How could you let us almost die ourselves? Why did you push me forward to where everything was supposed to collapse, decided to get rid of me?" "Shut up, fool," Trevor snapped. "You're one to talk. Do you think I don't know about your plans? Wanted to ditch me, huh? Take all the money for yourself after getting the insurance. And did you expect an honest split?" Her laughter sounded hysterical. "God, you're so naive, more stupid than my hubby. Mom always said I don't know how to choose men." I settled more comfortably on the rock, taking a thermos of hot coffee from my backpack. Now there was no need to hurry. Let the cold and fear do their job. Let them bring to the surface all the dirt, all the secret plans and betrayals. And I would wait. After all, I had prepared for this day for too long. Chapter 6: Shattered Ice. The sun was setting behind the mountains, coloring the snow in blood-red tones. The cold in the ice cave was becoming more and more excruciating with each minute. An hour passed, maybe more in the darkness, time lost meaning. Lauren and Trevor, exhausted, huddled together, trying to preserve the remnants of warmth. Their breath escaped in clouds of steam, instantly crystallizing in the icy air. "Ryan, damn it, where is he?" Lauren shouted for the umpteenth time, her voice hoarse with despair. "Please, I can't feel my legs, we'll freeze to death." The echo reflected off the icy walls, repeatedly multiplying her plea. Somewhere deep in the cave, water dripped, measured, like a metronome counting down time until the inevitable end. "Useless," Trevor hissed, rubbing his numb hands. "This smart elect just left us here to die. Apparently he figured us out. What irony, to get caught in our own trap. Even in Arctic shadow, they didn't teach that." "Don't you dare," Lauren turned sharply to him. "Don't you dare speak about him like that, if it weren't for your damned scam." "My scam?" Trevor laughed bitterly. "As if you're white and fluffy here, who forged documents, who played the role of a loving wife." From above, where the dim light outlined the exit from the cave, my silhouette appeared. Something glinted in my hands, climbing equipment. "Good evening. I've returned," my voice echoed through the cave. Although I must confess I never left. Very engaging conversation, almost familial. Continue, it's extremely interesting to observe how you shift blame onto each other. Ryan, thank God you're here. Darling, Lauren leaned forward, crying out in pain, frozen muscles refused to obey. I beg you, you've always been kind, noble. Enough, Trevor cut her off. Do you think your acting talents still work? He already figured everything out. Correct, I understood everything long ago, and I was ready for what happened today. I sat on the edge of the cliff, holding a coil of rope in my hands. What you thought was an avalanche, Trevor, was just an explosive I detonated above your heads, an imitation of a natural phenomenon. Then you did everything yourselves. I paused, observing their reaction. Now let's talk about rescue. I have all the necessary equipment. Actually, only one set. And do you know why? Because for receiving insurance, someone needs to stay here forever. But before deciding who gets it, let's talk. We haven't had an honest conversation in so long. You always seemed like a simpleton with a military trauma, but you turned out to be a freaking psychopath, Trevor hissed, but fear was already heard in his voice. Do you understand what you're suggesting? This is murder. Now that's interesting. I turned on a powerful flashlight, directing the beam straight into their faces. Fear exposes the soul, doesn't it? Look, Lauren, your lover is already starting to panic. And this was his plan, so flawless, so thought out. All right, Ryan, I admit I've lost, Trevor tried to speak calmly. But let's discuss this reasonably. It's just business, nothing personal. Pull me out of here and we'll make a deal. I have a good account in an offshore, not as huge as the insurance, but quite decent. And as for Lauren, she betrayed you. That's much worse than my business plans. I have nothing personal against you, but she. Nothing personal, I laughed, and this laughter echoed off the walls of the cave. Seducing my wife, planning a catastrophe at my resort, stealing my money. This is what you call nothing personal. He's lying, Lauren suddenly cried out. Ryan, listen. He manipulated me, used my weaknesses. I was such a fool. But now I see right through him. Forgive me, Ryan. You can't leave me to die here. I'm your wife. Her voice broke with a sob, so sincere that for a moment I felt a pang of doubt. But only for a moment. Dear, I shook my head. No need to be so devastated. I saw your letter to your mom, remember? The one where you described how you would first ruin me, get money from insurance, and then didn't plan to share with your crime partner at all. Right? Let's be honest, since we're having such a frank conversation. How are you any better than him? Lauren froze, her eyes widened with horror. Trevor sharply turned to her. What letter? What do you mean, didn't plan to share? I didn't, she stumbled, and suddenly her face changed. The mask of a helpless victim flew off, revealing a completely different expression, hard, calculating. Fine, she straightened up as much as the cave space allowed. You want the truth, Ryan? Yes, I planned a scam. Yes, I was going to deceive him, she nodded toward Trevor. And do you know why? He's just a tool, the perfect scapegoat. What? Trevor jerked towards her but slipped on the ice. Ryan, Lauren's voice became businesslike, almost intimate. Think about it. All the evidence is against him. He designed the accident, he prepared the fastenings. His signature's on all documents. If something happens to him now, it will look natural. A criminal who died in his own trap, all responsibility on him, and on us, not a shadow of suspicion. I get the insurance, more precisely, we get the insurance, darling. Let's leave him here. You're a beast, Trevor exhaled. Damned vixen, and I thought. What did you think, idiot? She turned to him, and steel rang in her voice. That you charmed a stupid housewife from the provinces. That I fell in love with your cheap tricks. Face the truth. You were always just a pawn in my game. Ryan, she addressed me again, and her voice became soft, insinuating. We can still fix everything, right now. Insurance, money, everything will be ours. Let's start anew, just the two of us. And this scum will get what he deserves. He's a criminal, a con artist. No one will miss him. Imagine just an accident in the mountains. Give me the rope, I'll climb up. God, Trevor laughed hoarsely, terribly. What an idiot I was. And yet at the agency, they warned, you play a woman in love too well for an ordinary housewife. Shut up, she almost spat this word. Ryan, decide. Time is running out, it will be completely dark soon. Think about the money, the future. We can just leave him here, by morning he'll freeze to death. The future, I slowly stood up. You know what I'm thinking about the day when I found you in the snowstorm. You were shaking from the cold, clinging to me like a savior, just like now. Was that a game too? No, something trembled in her voice. Then, no, I really loved you, Ryan, but later. You were always absorbed in your resort, your business plans, and I wanted more. $45 million in insurance, in one fell swoop. And for this more, you're ready to send a person to their death. He's not a person, he's a con artist just like you, I quietly finished. I took out the radio. All posts, this is Shepard, directing a rescue team to the northern slope, and call the sheriff. No, both prisoners of the ice cave shouted in unison. Yes, I began to unwind the rope. I will save you both, because there are things more important than revenge. There are concepts of honor and justice that you won't understand, but it doesn't matter. Ryan, for the first time something genuine sounded in Lauren's voice. I really did love you, once truly loved. I know, Lauren, that's why I'm saving you. But love and justice are different things, especially here in the mountains where everyone sooner or later shows their true face. I began to lower the equipment, and below, in the cold darkness, two people looked at each other with hatred, gradually realizing that they had lost. Lost to someone they considered too simple and honest for their sophisticated games. To someone who, in this ice cave, proved stronger than both of them. The rescue operation lasted almost 3 hours. I watched as professionals, whom I once trained myself, methodically extracted two half-frozen people from the ice cave. Lauren didn't look at me, only down, as if the ice under her feet held some answers to her questions. When the police arrived, the snow had already stopped falling. Sheriff Montgomery, my old friend, silently listened to the recording from the cave, looking at me with poorly concealed surprise. "Good Lord, Ryan," was all he said, shaking his head. "How did you even survive?" I smiled joylessly. "You know, in the mountains there's a rule, never underestimate your opponent, even if that opponent is your own wife." The trial took place 4 months later. The hall was full, journalists, owners of other resorts, local residents. Everyone wanted to see the conclusion of the story that had shocked their quiet town. I sat in the front row, right behind my ex-wife. Her perfume, which I once loved so much, now made me nauseous. Lauren held up superbly. She always was a first-class actress. She talked about temporary insanity, about how she was drawn into this scam, blamed everything on Trevor. Cried, asked for forgiveness, but I saw her tears were as fake as our last years together. Trevor broke down. On the second day of the trial, he told everything, about other resorts, about past scams, about how they planned this with Lauren. His detailed testimony was the final nail in the coffin of their common grave. 18 years, announced the judge. Both of them, no possibility of early release. When they were being led away, Lauren finally looked me in the eyes. There was neither remorse nor love in her gaze, only the anger of a cornered predator. A year passed. The Hawks Peak resort not only survived, it flourished. The story of the prevented tragedy made it legendary. People believed, a place where truth defeated lies cannot be dangerous. Sometimes, on particularly cold nights, I still wake up from nightmares in which I see Lauren's face, as it was on the day when I found her in the blizzard. Frightened, sincere, full of hope. I know that I will never know for sure. Was she real then, or already playing a role that eventually led both of us to the edge of an abyss? But one thing I'm sure of, the ice that once settles in a human heart cannot be melted by anything, not even by the hottest love. And I also know for certain, mountains do not forgive lies. Sooner or later, they reveal the true nature of everyone who dares to challenge them.